Shall I go live?
Yeah, we're live. So here we are. We're live. In front of a mobile network. It's a bit windy, so let me know if the noise is too much. You're on mute.
Yeah, you're struggling a wee bit. It'd be good to get a shot of the radio on the landing.
That was back there.
Along. Exactly, but the sun was behind the radio, so. But anyway,
that's the best view. That's #Flair.
Well, it looked.
Bit J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, quite. I was
demonstrating my immense skills to walk backwards. There you go.
But I think it's just the two of us today. We've had another guest that's invited. We may or may not join us, but we'll do our usual half-hour news. And
there's quite a lot of news this week as well, isn't there?
There's a lot to go through this week on general news, but also, I guess since I was obviously away last week, since then we've done another food and drink festival up at Three Counties Showground in Worcester. And we provided probably about half the traders with connectivity to the payment terminal solutions. Slightly different approach this time. We enabled MiFi, so 5G radio, and then we put them in stalls, strategically placed in stalls, or in their stalls, and then could allow 2 or 3 traders or more to connect to that MiFi. And it worked very well. There's a couple of people brought their own solutions. So a couple that brought their own solutions that didn't work, and effectively were going to be on the day. If we weren't there, they wouldn't have been able to trade. Full stop.
Which is terrible.
Which is awful. A lot of people brought their own solutions, and they worked because there was kind of some mobile coverage. The Wi-Fi was patchy, so some traders were able to use the on-site Wi-Fi, but it was patchy. And there was a couple of people that didn't trust what we were doing, which is quite normal. And then their solutions fell over, and then we gave them a solution, and it was road to Damascus stuff in terms of conversion.
And then they wanted a solution again. Strange, isn't it?
Solution. Yeah, it's funny that. Eh? So we enabled those guys, and one guy said, "Look," he about halfway through came over to where we were. We had our own area, and he said, "Whatever you choose." I've run out of juice, so get my battery pack, put him back up again. He said, "I tried to go back onto my previous solution, which is a 4G hotspot type solution, and it didn't work, and he wasn't trading for about 30 minutes, which really made him a bit agitated, but that's good. So fantastic response.
We're in Shelsley Walsh. I was listening to race cars all day. Try and share some pictures.
That was the previous week when I was away, yeah?
Yes. So, on that note, though, however, the first news article is very exciting and on this, and it's called VMO2 cows. Why do people call them cells on wheels? Cows just sounds absolutely awful. I don't know, but then so do nows, I suppose. But VMO2 have announced that they have temporary masts, and this is wonderful, that are powered by hydro-treated vegetable oil solution, expected to save 300 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. The network says that this saving is the same as the annual energy used by 530 homes. What they don't say, obviously, is that is basically palm oil, which is about as renewable as, probably slightly more renewable than diesel, in that the stocks will not end. But it's debatable how much devastation they create whilst being making it. But somebody, I'm sure, can work this out, how much fuel that the cows actually use. But of course, it still kicks out NOx, which, I don't know, I just find it very bizarre that people can go and have a solution that gives out absolutely huge amounts of NOx. But we can share the amounts. I'm sure somebody who wants to do the maths can work this out. But they basically they publish the figures of how much palm oil that they're using, and given that they save 300 tons of it, I mean they must be using thousands or tens of thousands of tons of fuel. And the nice thing is obviously that, I suppose the other nice thing is that if it is basically palm oil, it'll smell like, those cars that are using repurposed vegetable oil, and it smells like a very bad chippy. For those of you outside of the UK, a chippy is a place that aspires to do fish and chips, which everybody knows, but really can just do really bad chips that only appeal to you at about 4 o'clock in the morning after you've come out of a nightclub, and will leave a funny taste in your mouth the next day, which is worse than what made you go out until 4 o'clock in the morning, i.e. 57 tequilas, which is quite a feat actually for that to happen. But yeah, I think so more needs to be said about renewable. We are 100% renewable. I'm sat here a couple of 100 meters away from the cell, and everything is running off solar. Obviously it's a nice day and it's the middle of the day, but you can charge the batteries pretty quickly. And some people did comment on there was a wonderful, so we had Dean Bubbly come down here and give us an amazing report on LinkedIn that has absolutely took off. But yeah, I mean, it is quite amazing how well we are covered, and that's sort of how well people were covered in the events as well. Have you got one, or should we move on?
The other thing that struck me this week, 2 reports came out about RAM, which sort of falls on the cells and wheels. I mean, you've just come from the environmental angle. In terms of the radio side of it, was the first report was figures generally for the industry reporting about a 2% reduction in terms of RAM spend, which is sensible. 5G's rolled out, and as much as it's going to, you'd still big numbers, but they're not going to grow. Is the point? The second report that came out was ORAM, and that is reinforcing what we discussed probably about a month ago, which is the 40% increase for spend on that. Early next decade to around about 17 billion US. So I think the bets are placed, and we're seeing a tangible shift from traditional RAM spending into storage, which is great for us because it's we placed our bet a long time ago, and it's nice to get validated. I guess is one thing is one point.
It is.
So,
well, the whole point of what we're doing is basically to prove that it will serve large amounts of customers very well. And I suppose if we are coming back to this, Liv joined us. You were at our last couple of events, but we were talking briefly about the cell on wheels and how much vegetable oil or palm oil that they use, but we've moved on to Open RAN, and we are proving that it works very well, to the point that in some of the events we had in the last event, briefly about the cell on wheels and how much vegetable oil, palm oil that they use, but is that Open RAN?
I think that's Liv's feedback.
Right. To the point that it's the first time you do get on StreamYard sometimes. I think you just need to go on mute yet. We had that in the first few tests, but we will iron those out. So yeah, there was even people. It's changing the way people are doing events. So we had some lovely people selling, and I don't have the name to hand, which is shocking. They were selling meat boxes, and they're from the various regions selling organic meat delivered to your door. And the network was so fast and the latency so low that instead of actually just showing, I mean, they'd come to the event expecting to have to show people screenshots of the website, or at best, show them the website, but they're actually clicking through and creating personalized meat box for people and adding them onto a subscription live. And they'd never been able to do that before, and they'd never expect to be able to do that again. And it's just shocking to see. I mean, there's loads of it from the ice cream van who said he was doing more ice creams per minute. I don't know what the other ones are, but it's quite clear that so Open RAN has sort of been forced as a cheaper alternative, but what we're doing basically is even it's not certified by ORAN. It's Open 5GS, and it is a whole level cheaper to deploy again, and it is the goal of the government, obviously, in DSIT with this project is to prove that it can do high demand density environments, and we're proving that show after show with Worcestershire. So, on that note, there's a 5G shutdown. I suppose that we segue onto these news articles almost like we'd had a huge amount of time preparing. But the 3G shutdown is happening. 2G is living on, but it should accelerate 4G and 5G. And I think the 5G, for me, every time we do another one of these events, it sort of shows that we need more of these. The overwhelming. So I'm just looking forward to the fact we've done so many videos at these events of people saying, I need this at every event. And there was another great guy said that it's not just rural events. We need it at the NEC in Birmingham. We need it at Excel. They do these events and it just doesn't work. And Liz from our team even saw that at Tech UK, Unilever were trying to do a demo and the internet fell over, and we could have enabled that. It's just time to roll this out en masse. And the figures that trying to have this discussion about ORAN being the solution and it is great and it's a great move, but it's we can roll these out pretty quickly. Anyway, I don't know whether should I let Liv back in. It's we should have done a test, Liv, with you before trying to join. It always can be a bit interesting.
Just to pick up on your last point, Christian, was the whole summer is about us getting slicker. Proving a concept at the beginning of the summer that the thing actually works, and then towards the end of the and as we're getting now into the events on a higher frequency to increase the scope, increase the higher density distribution of what we're doing, to play with it on the private network side, but the practicalities as well. And one thing struck me. I think the first one, it wouldn't be unfair to say, it probably took us the best part of 3 hours to get a single Landy up and running and live. This event on the weekend, we just did on the weekend, the Land Rover was set up in probably about 40 minutes, and even that was so sub 30 minutes is very practical from arriving on site and having the radio up and running, and a plan to distribute however we're going to provide connectivity to the user, the traders, or the MPs or whatever. And that, I'm sure, contrasts with what we were just talking about with the VMO2 solution. And
I've actually tracked this. I know it felt like 3 hours because you're having to listen to me ask for things, but I've actually tracked because we have trackers on all the Land Rovers, so we know when they arrived, and we have trackers on all the UEs and CPEs, etc., so we know when they're on, and we know obviously when the network's on. The longest we ever took was 2 hours the first time in the spring show, and quite frankly, that was 3 blokes having coffee whilst putting a network up. But ultimately, the speeds to put it up at the moment is not one of our KPIs, but the way that we're doing them through a series of issues of the DSIT funding being late and us having to run decking out the Land Rovers, building the EVs, and developing systems at the same time means that basically we don't have time. We're using some older radios that are much heavier, that can't use the mechanism that literally will take minutes to put up. But and I haven't really bothered because it's not one of our KPIs. But ultimately, you do make a very interesting point. And what will be key is utilization. We're at a dawn now where a lot of these radios, the cows that go up, are like the worst airline ever before EasyJet came along. And our planes work for 2 hours on a Sunday, or 2 hours a day. They do the route between London and whatever, and obviously EasyJet, etc., come in and say, no, if the plane's not in the air for 10 hours a day, how on earth are you going to make any money from this? Make an ROI on this investment, and that's it's key. We will. So it should be down to about 15 minutes at some point, and that is, it takes longer to. Each element of a traditional network on wheels takes longer than that. Even putting the barriers around that we don't need for a cordon zone. But anyway, so back to news. So we see the 3G shut down. I also saw another thing that basically said that 2G is not dead and will continue to help rural coverage for years. The phased shutdown is 2033. Kill me. We've spent a lot of time in rural areas recently, and the last event was the worst one. We're in the Upton Blues Festival, and we had to drive. Foolishly, I didn't put the Waze of our Airbnb whilst our network was still up, and we turned it down overnight and drove off, and we had to drive literally about 5 miles out of Upton before we had enough signal for the sat nav to kick in. And so I honestly, I don't know, when I see a rural network now with the E of Edge, and before, when Edge was there, it's like, whoa, I've got fast data. But that's when websites were a few K, and a video was 170 by 50. In the days of 4K and websites that are have hundreds of kilobytes, megabyte images on them. I don't know. Anyway, it's quite shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think the 2G angle was always to keep for legacy IoT devices, and therefore, you can see 4G being taken out before 2G is, frankly, on the current strategy. It's not to say it will be, but that would, following the current strategy, be the smart thing to do. However, 4G, don't worry, everybody, 4G's got a very long life yet, because it's filling in all the gaps for 5G where they're not spending the money on RAM, as we discussed.
4G's brilliant, and I get the IoT side in a port, but rolling out 2G for rural coverage is just, it's great for a bit of voice, but no one uses voice anymore. Honestly, some of the figures that you see on voice, that we've got single-digit calls. The average now in the UK for many of the networks that we see is actually single-digit calls people are making on their mobile phone now. And it's, what kind of data can you get over 2G? It just doesn't really.
Well, it's not. Yeah, it's basic functionality, isn't it?
You just cross all of your fingers that Waze does not try to reroute you, because it's probably not enough bandwidth to even do that, let alone get you a route.
Yeah, it's just
so. One of the interesting things, which brings us nicely, is 5G SA is to take off, and here's something I can sort of get behind, because I think 5G SA is going to take off, based on everything we hear about in these events. It's just a fantastic solution, isn't it? I realized it's like the other day. It is essentially a mobile network equivalent of like.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Oh, you're back. How you doing?
Sorry, I'm on my iPad. Something wrong with my laptop. So there we go. Anyway.
Do you know what? The iPad, I do this on iPads. They just work so much better. The mics are better. The audio, everything's better. But well, so we got onto the fact that 5G standalone is going to grow. I don't know if you've got the stats, because I've got it on my laptop, which is not 5G. And so I'm sort of a bit shut off. But 5G SA to standard, and I do realize people sometimes say that standalone networks, as in not a mobile network, aren't I saw a few of the comments on Dean Bubley's review of when he came down to the farm to see the setup. But ultimately, it is a bit like a travel sim, isn't it? You've got data only, but it just works. And I don't think you realize until you need data to just work how amazing it is to have fast data that just works. I remember this even going to places like Mexico, where I don't know what would happen 10 years ago when we were building the bid for Altan and Red Compartida. Vodafone's, you land there and it says it'll be some silly price per megabytes, some silly price per minute. You try and make a call because it's urgent at £2 a minute or something, and it's awful. And you try and use the data and it's awful. You get a local data only sim and bang, you're just literally having VoIP calls whilst having taco street food and just going, why do I even bother? And I think that's the same with the events now. So we went through Live Quickly how there was the guys with the food box company were even making up boxes for people because the network was so fast, and getting them to subscribe on site in real time. I mean, there's not even I don't see that really happening in a. We could almost do this side by side, couldn't we? And say, look, here's 5G in a proper environment, and here's and there are certain things that do work. Like if you want to stream Netflix or something, and there's not that many people kind of doing it, then the non-standalone network is pretty good.
But I think the other thing as well that we saw was there were uninterrupted sales, right? And when people had a problem, they really saw the difference once they were on the 5G network. Some of the traders quite, understandably wanted to keep to their own system. But then when they had a problem and they switched over to the 5G, the amount of sales that they were doing in comparison, I think, it's amazing.
Well, it is, especially because they usually leave the switching over to it's human nature, right? Nobody wants change, and you're in a high stress environment where you've paid a lot of money for a pitch, and you just, you're focused on the business as usual. And it's not until it really, really fails that you go, right, where are those annoying little so-and-sos in the Land Rover, and who are going to tell me I told you so. But it's fantastic. Moving on from there, there are two wonderful things. So we have these kind of ups and downs, don't we, in phones. One of them, AI, is suddenly going to use more data, but then we've had two releases where Apple have released diagnostics to independent resellers, which is fantastic. So it's fantastic in one way because our office is next to an Apple store, and so in Battersea, and it's fantastic. You go into the Apple store and they solve everything. Like even when I was using an experimental beta that will not let you log out if you're in a location that's away from your home, the guys went upstairs to the head office, sorted it out. But when you're in a place where there is no Apple store, the world of an independent diagnostic, an independent store is the thought is just horrendous. And this is not like in the sticks. This is in probably sometimes even a second, third, fourth town in a country. By the time you've come out of the big major cities, I suppose. Yeah, I mean these are fantastic, and HMD have made a repairable phone. I think we do need to get to times, don't we? If you iPads, you mentioned it. I mean, I have iPads that are physically perfect still. Only the chip inside is, I mean, even if I went to update it to the latest software that it can use, I don't think I'd have the patience to click through. But we do need to get to a situation where you can replace that, and not throwing the whole thing, including the screen, into a landfill.
Yeah, I mean, that segues quite nicely onto one of the things that I don't know whether you've touched on it already, this idea of deprived rural areas that don't have coverage. We've got, quite a few things coming up, including the Digital Poverty Day on the 12th of September. Well, that could be from one thing in terms of rural poverty or deprivation to, as we said, you were talking there about stuff that we can recycle and reuse. So I think it
does, and also what we previously mentioned of the networks, because certainly some of the people in our consortia said that in Bristol and Bath there are a lot of people, especially in high-rise, very dense, poorer areas, who are, with the cost of living crisis, just slowly getting rid of their internet, which leaves you in an even worse trap, right? I mean, you don't have access to be able to create money or even look for jobs, and to be an entrepreneur, a lot of you need digital connectivity. But this is where the utilization of these networks is going to be fantastic. So we're getting to a situation now where obviously the events series we started in April and we'll probably finish in February. But obviously the vast majority of them are May, June, July, August, September. And that's when the network can be used. But I think the council should be just rolling out these networks. If there's, I think it was put quite well, wasn't it? I think you were at the launch event. I know you were at the launch event, but I think this is when they said it, Carl. Basically, there's a lot of areas in England where they have just about okay coverage for the better off parts on a good day when there's no event. Yeah. And then there's the rest, and then there's good luck. And we even had in the Shelsley Waltz event, there was a bunch of people who were looking at, they were called vintage, what is it, vintage military vehicle team. And, they were basically trying to get a load of people turning up in up to 100-year-old cars and need to speak to them. So every 10 minutes they have to walk to the top of the hill. But that analogy just works for a lot of people. If you have to go into the village or worse, have to go down to the cafe and have to spend a coffee, the coffees will add up to more than the internet that you can't afford very quickly. And they should be rolling out these networks, in the towns, and especially when we have the coffee machines and pizza ovens and bars in the back. There are 2 in 1. And I honestly see this. I know that the predictions say, but the 5GSA is going to take off, and it really is. And I even see a situation where there's a lot of people who, that 5GSA is their primary internet. It's sad, but it is.
Yeah, the networks are not going to do much about it, purely and simply because there's no business case to support.
And I understand that fully. We're at the situation where it is like the airline thing now. I mean, they're trying to solve a problem with BA business class flying 2 hours a day, and it's just there's a whole market out there. The EasyJet model needs to be exploited, and it is going to be very interesting. And quite frankly, the somewhere in the middle, which is Open RAN at the moment, really isn't the high utilization model. It's just slightly cheaper, can be slightly higher utilization. And the networks on wheels and the cows that we have at the moment are, we'll put up a network 2 weeks before Glastonbury, take it down for the 2 weeks after, and by the way, it's a public network, so it'll still fall over if too many people try to use it at the same time anyway. And some of these dates are just ridiculous, right? We're going to be rolling out more 2G because it's now going to be extended to 2033. I mean, can you imagine if you live in the middle of the country and you've got every time that you see an E in the top corner of your phone, you go, oh God. And then they tell you, oh, don't worry, you've only got this until 2033. Oh, thank you. That's fantastic.
Nobody's going to buy Starlink, are they? You know what I mean?
Well, this is the other thing. And this brings you on to finally, there's another point that I saw. I love Dean Bubley's. I don't know if you've been into Dean Bubley's article, but it's literally loads of comments. And there are people saying, Starlink's an okay backhaul for events, but it's not for proper infrastructure. And it's like, well, hang on. No. I mean, I know lots of people now who've got rid of their 12 meg broadband, which was still costing £40 a month, and spending getting a Starlink because they want something that works or because the broadband goes down so much. There are plenty of people using it as their permanent internet now. There are plenty of traders who have got bored of everything and they're putting a Starlink on the roof. And there is no point waiting for rural coverage or having a plan where rural coverage is only needed a certain part of the year, digging up the countryside and needing generators and work and road blocks, etc., when you can just stick a Starlink up there. It's just not. It's or a plethora of Starlinks. I still don't know what the. I did ask the internet what the.
Plural.
What's the. What is it? The. Thank you. What the collective noun is of Starlinks, and we will need to come up with the correct one.
And filter out anything rude, I would assume, as well.
Yes.
Given it's Elon. It's a fairly divisive character. I'm very pro Elon, but he's a fairly divisive character.
But I don't. I mean, obviously he is very divisive, but at the end of the day, he's stirred. I mean, he redefines disrupting 2 or 3 industries that really needed disrupting.
Yeah,
and that's what the world needs more of.
Yeah.
So we have come to an end of the half an hour that we allocate to talking about news, which is a shame. But we did it over 5G in a field from a Land Rover over a Starlink, which is clearly not good enough to be permanent infrastructure, but way better than the whisper of Wi-Fi that I have in the corner here.
Yeah.
And that's before people turn up. Now when it's empty, it's fine. But obviously, if a load of people turn up and want to, search whatever they do whilst having a latte. But we shall be doing this again next week, I believe. I will be probably in a different location that is has more guaranteed sun. It was supposed to actually be raining today now, but hence being under the parasol. But yeah,
great.
Wireless Wednesdays, we'll be back next Wednesday. We've had a little bit of a break, I think, whilst we had a few holidays and quite frankly a huge amount of work. And we had this silly thing that we'd try and do a Wireless Wednesday from an event build. Yeah, right. That's but we will be back next week. And thanks everyone for watching, and thanks to all of you for your time. And we shall catch you in the next one.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.